So all eyes are on the intra-Afghan talks that are underway in Russia's capital, Moscow. The two-day meeting is seen as another step in a process aimed at resolving the 17-year-long Afghanistan war. The delegation attending the meeting released a joint statement saying that their goal is to start an intra-Afghanistan talks process. The conference brings together prominent figures from Afghanistan, opposition parties, the Taliban and tribal leaders of Afghanistan as well. The Afghanistan government, led by Ashraf Ghani, has been invited to the talks, and former President of Afghanistan Hamid Karzai is attending the two-day peace talks. On being asked about the Afghan government's absence despite being invited, Karzai said that he hopes that it will join the talks in the future.
A very good meeting, and officially we'll be talking later on.
Yes.
Yes.
But is that a problem that official Kabul government is not here?
Let's not speak about those things. We hope they will be there someday. With us.
The Moscow talks are underlining the increasing role of Russia that's playing in Afghanistan decades after the Soviet forces withdrew from the country, with business investment plans, diplomatic and cultural outreach, and small military support for the central government. They also come as the Afghan government is struggling to recover control of districts lost to the Taliban. While the Russian government denies orchestrating the meeting, it says that the idea is to lay the foundation for an eventual peace process. Russia says that the Taliban are a part and parcel of Afghanistan and they cannot be ignored.
Россия, как вы знаете, активно выступает за налаживание межафганского диалога с участием и правительства, и движения талибов, поскольку талибы – это часть афганского общества, и никуда от этого факта не денешься.
The Moscow dialogue comes after officials from over 40 countries attended an international contact group meeting in London, where top US and Afghan officials announced their support for the Afghan peace process. We have Julia Chapman joining us live from Moscow for more on that big story that we're tracking here tonight on Your Story. Julia, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us. Moscow has been sort of leading these talks, and in fact, on their invite, on the US's invite, the Taliban came to the table. But at the same time, you have the Afghanistan government, which has been dubbed as puppets of Washington by the Taliban, that has refused to show up for this round of talks.
Yes, that's right. But Russia, the Russian government, has denied that it's actually organized these talks. They say that they've been organized by members of the Afghan diaspora in Russia and other former Soviet countries, and that they are being held as intra-Afghan talks and are not involving outside parties, including the Russian government, although the Russian foreign ministry yesterday said that they wish them all the best for these two-day talks that are happening here in Moscow. But there are, of course, some who are suggesting that Russia is actually orchestrating more than their appear to be doing behind the scenes. But of course, as you say, the Afghan government is not participating in these talks because they refuse to be involved in this kind of dialogue, and the Taliban, of course, itself is refusing to deal directly with the Afghan government. So there are question marks indeed over what concrete measures can come of these talks that are happening here in Moscow, although the peace process on Afghanistan does appear to be moving somewhat forward, with talks between the US and the Taliban happening in Qatar last month, which seemed to yield some progress on some sort of draft agreement of what peace in Afghanistan could look like in the near future. But that would, of course, involve US troops being withdrawn completely from Afghanistan. And as we know, there are still 14,000 US troops in Afghanistan. And so the Afghan government has serious concerns about that. And they're also critical that they are being left out of the process altogether, both by the US, which, of course, is their ally, but also by Russia. But Julia, the problem here is that this two-day meeting that's hoping to establish a fundamental block for the peace process, is taking place without the Afghanistan government. And the Afghanistan government has been having its own problems with the U.S. government because of the announcement of U.S. President Donald Trump about the troop withdrawal. Ashraf Ghani has had serious problems with the sudden withdrawal of troops from his country as well. Yes, that's right. There are serious concerns on behalf of the Afghan government about the withdrawal of US troops. They're concerned that that could lead to further problems in Afghanistan. Another Taliban demand that has been made is that if this peace process were to be signed, once the US troops were to have withdrawn completely from Afghanistan, the Taliban is in fact demanding that the Afghan military be dismantled altogether because they believe that it was created with the help of the US government, and as a result of that shouldn't really be in charge of the military in Afghanistan. And that's something that the Afghan government under Ashraf Ghani, the president, is simply refusing to do because they think that would be a fundamental security risk in Afghanistan, and they have built this military that they want to see continue into the future. But of course it does bear the question, how can they move forward on these fundamental differences between them if the Taliban is refusing to sit down with the Afghan government itself?
Julia Chapman joining us with that update straight from Moscow. Thank you, Julia, for being with us and sharing that perspective. Away from that.